Welcome to the Amazing Grace Talk podcast. Conversations that explore how God has pursued those He has made in His image. My wife and host, Erika Seamayer-Williamson, is on a journey to meet everyday people who have experienced a radical encounter with the divine presence of unconditional love. These are the stories that remind us why God's grace is amazing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast. My name is Erika, and I'm so glad you stopped by. It is my hope that through the amazing testimonies you will hear on this show, will plant a seed in your heart and ignite your dreams, all for God's glory. Through much prayer and listening to God's direction, I actually retired from a 30-year career in 2020 to spend more time doing just that, helping women find clarity, overcome struggles, and discover their true calling. In 2016, I launched the Amazing Grace Retreats in the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota. Started this podcast in September of last year, and in the spring, I will finish my autobiography, a book that shares my struggles and victories to prove that anyone can live in God's amazing grace for those who believe in Him. I can't wait to see you at the next retreat. Right now, I'd like to introduce my guest today. It is none other than my daughter, Erika Laine. Welcome to the show, Erika Laine.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, it was kind of fun. We already had, we recorded another podcast earlier today. Since she's in town, we kind of have to get all we can of Erika Laine while she's here, but you guys make sure you check out that. It's a 2-part series before, but make sure you check that out. But today's subject, we're actually going to go into a little health issue Erika Laine had. She actually had something called an AVM. It's an arterial venous malformation, or how do you say it?
An arteriovenous malformation.
Okay. For some reason, I thought I was saying it right the whole time, and I guess I wasn't. But that happened to Erika Laine. She was 21 years old, and she was living in South Dakota. And, it was the day that I got the call. We're going to go in and let her tell you the story. But that was actually on Good Friday. I was in Dallas. Erika Laine was in South Dakota. And what happened that day?
So I just want the listeners to know that it wasn't cancerous and it wasn't a tumor. It was something that I was born with. So like whenever you're in your mom's womb and your brain is forming like a map, there's just a section of blood veins and clusters where it gets clustered up. And so as I grew, it grew. And so with lack of sleep, if you have over amount of headaches, if you have seizures out of the ordinary. So I was lucky enough to have 2 seizures in a day, because if you don't, if it goes unnoticed, or if you don't have any signs or symptoms, then you could just have an aneurysm. And just die. So I was very lucky and very grateful that, yes, it was sad, and yes, oh my gosh, I had 2 seizures, but luckily it was seizures instead of having an aneurysm.
Yeah, right. So the very first seizure that you had, though, you didn't even know you had one.
No, I thought I just passed out.
Well, and so that was, you'd been out the night before with friends, and you were just kind of sleeping in the next day on the couch, right?
Yes.
Trying to catch up on your sleep.
What you do when you're 21.
Yeah. So you were there, and apparently your friend that was there with you just thought you had just kind of rolled off the couch. Tell us about what happened when you went to work.
So when I went to work, I was feeling just kind of tired, and, I just pictured that as being tired from going out that night.
Right.
And I didn't even think, oh my gosh, I had a seizure, and so that's why I'm so tired. But I just, so I went to work, and I was in expo in the kitchen, and I was back there, and I was just feeling like tired and kind of hungover.
Something was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, something was wrong. And so just being back there in the heat and just, I don't know. And so my arms were crossed. And my girlfriend who was working doing the expo, the same thing, she looked at me and she said she knew something was off, because usually I'm really happy and I go in there and I'm like, hey guys, how are y'all tonight, or whatever. And so she knew that something was wrong, and so my arms were crossed, and I remember her looking at me and saying, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? Like, And then she kind of whispered, like, are you drunk? And I was like, no. And then she asked me something else, and my brain blacked out. And so I don't really remember what happened because I blacked out, but she brought me back into my manager's office, which was, if I had to guess, like 45 steps back into the kitchen and back around. And so when my manager asked me what was wrong, she said that I hit my head against the wall and I had a grand mal seizure, which is like the worst seizure that you can have.
Yes. And so then she called the ambulance, right? And you were taken to Spearfish Hospital, which is a smaller town. The hospital about that time is when, so I wanted to pick it up from on the other end of it as a parent. We were actually out, it was a Good Friday, and we were at our church service. And we had friends in, very dear friends of ours. Cindy and Dave were in from South Dakota.
So here there was South Dakota was here with us in Texas, because we were in Texas, and, sitting out at this awesome restaurant and, enjoying ourselves, and praise and worship was going on at the time. And, I got a phone call. Typically when I get a phone call that's a 605 area code, which is South Dakota, it's usually, I knew it to be a client. And since it was loud and, we were out and about, I didn't answer. I thought, well, I'll just call the client back later. And then soon after I received a text from your manager that said, Erika Laine's been in an accident. Yikes. As a mom, I had no idea. So I didn't even tell anyone. I just excused myself, tried to find a quiet place because it was very noisy where we were. Found a place, and she had explained that you had a grand mal seizure, and you'd never had a seizure in your life, so I didn't even know what to think. She told me that they were going to take you on to Rapid City, which was a larger city, about 45 minutes away. And so pick it up. We'll come back to you now, or go back to you on what were your thoughts or what was going through your mind at this time, because we didn't know what had happened.
So in my mind, all I could think about was telling my manager, oh my gosh, Claire, I'm about to be in an ambulance. And she looked at me and she said, you just were in an ambulance. And so I was like, was I really? So my senior year, I ended up living with my best friend for the last, few months.
Yeah.
And so she was like a mom to me. And my mom, after she found out what had happened, she called Kirsten and said, oh my gosh, she's going to be at the hospital. Will you please be there?
Yeah. Stand in for me, please.
Yeah. And so she did. Yeah. And it was awesome.
I was so grateful. Are you getting teary-eyed?
Yeah.
Me too, because that was my first thought was, Kirsten, can you be there?
And she just immediately, she's like, I'll be there. So she went and was by your side. You were in the hospital over the weekend.
Stephanie, which is my dear friend, she's my room, or she's not my roommate now, but she was my roommate at the time, best friend in high school. And so she came after she got off of work.
Okay.
And so she spent all Easter weekend with me up in the hospital.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we didn't know. They kept telling us stuff like, oh, we're going to take her to Sioux Falls, which is, 5 hours away. You were going to drive in an ambulance. And I was like, no, we have UT Southwestern. You're coming back to Dallas. We weren't going to. That was a really strange weekend, because the reason why I didn't fly up till Monday was because we didn't know where you were going to be, where they were just trying to figure out what happened. So anyway, I flew up on that Monday, and I don't know, Tuesday or the very next day we flew back.
Yeah.
And during that time, we have a dear friend that's a board certified plastic surgeon who, I really felt lost and didn't know what to do. I'd never experienced seizure, anything like that. And I called him and I just said, who do we go to? Who do we call? And he said, you call Dr. White, head of neurology at UT Southwestern. And honestly, you guys, by the grace of God, did we even get an appointment? Because we didn't even know. I have no idea if Yuki called. I really don't. He
Yeah.
could have called. I have no idea. I don't know if it was I think it was all a God thing, but I'm saying, I don't know how that worked out and orchestrated. We were just grateful because later on, someone had asked me and they were like, I can't get an appointment. I'm like, I don't know how. It was just a blessing.
So we flew back on a Monday. Or no, I got admitted on Monday. We both flew back to Texas on that Wednesday. And 2 days later, we had my first neurology meeting, which my grandpa, I remember when they went to go see Dr. White, they were on a 4-month waiting list.
See?
So it was just, wow.
We don't know. It was just, we know it was a God thing, and God was definitely had his hand in it. But so at that appointment, here's the appointment. Erika Laine was sitting kind of next to him, and, and I was sitting in the chair, how you do. Anyway, I was a little bit farther away, and he starts he was explaining to us like he was telling us a recipe, like, here, add 4 cups of this and 2 of that, like that, because that's what he does, right? It's just like his regular everyday life, but to us, it was your life he was talking about. And, he was saying, he started to tell Erika Laine that it was an AVM, and he starts telling her, you're going to have 3, you want to tell it?
Yeah, so where it was in my brain, he said that it would need 3 embolizations where they go in through the groin and they send glue so that it's easier for the surgeon to go and just remove it instead of, if you wouldn't have done that,
you could have had a stroke.
It would have just, And so so they sent up glue for the first 3, and then finally was the cranial brain surgery, and he's telling me that, and I'm just looking at him like, okay, great, like I wasn't smiling by any means, but I was like positive. And he's like, well, you could, we don't know how it's going to end up, but you could end up with a cane. You could end up in a wheelchair. You could,
or you might not make it.
Yeah. Or you might not make it. And so, just telling everything that could happen, because it's the brain. They don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And
so, I just looked over and you heard my mom crying like, oh my gosh, what is happening?
No, actually, once they said all that, and, I'm listening, trying to be open to everything. And when he starts telling me all of this, what could happen, from the surgery. And then when he's like, and she, it's not guaranteed. She might not make it. And and I'm over there in my head. If I would have been standing, I would have collapsed, but I was sitting, and I just put my head in my hands, and he rolled over to me. I could sit in his doctor's chair. He's like, is your mom okay? And I was a wreck. I was just, I couldn't believe what she was going to have to go through. I just couldn't believe it. But we got it together and got our, I do want to go back and say, we were another blessing that happened in all this is that we were transitioning from your health care. And we had somehow, this sounds so dumb. You look back on it and you think, how could I have done that? But we were looking for another health care. So, and somehow it had lapsed. And lo and behold, we found out that her dad, because he'd been in the military, she was covered by, what was that insurance called?
Just the VA medical.
She was covered by that, you guys. And I'm telling you, I'm just telling you, that is God. And you cannot explain that any other way, because we didn't even know we had that insurance. The insurance, some of her surgeries alone were $250,000. Your 11-hour, who knows? So can you imagine not only this burden of, everything happening, but then not the burden, but, just this news coming our way, but then to find out that we were, to have to be stuck with all these medical bills.
Yeah.
And God just had his hand in that as well. And all of a sudden, she did have, she was covered. But, so what that kind of looked like is, the embolization surgeries, Erika Laine those were about 2 weeks apart. So you had, one was a 5-hour surgery, and then
like a 4.5, and then.
Well, I know exactly. It was a 4-hour, 2 weeks apart, and then the next one was a 5-hour surgery, because I remember I was getting real nervous when they were not out by 4 hours. I was like, hey, this took 4 hours last time. What in the heck happened? And by this point, I was really getting nervous, but then they came out. Now, you stayed in the hospital
that night.
Yeah, that night, preparing for your 11-hour surgery. That's your cranial brain surgery. So the shocking thing as a mom that I could never figure out, how is Erika Laine not, number one, feeling sorry for herself? She wasn't scared. She just was so optimistic. And how do you feel like you got through that? I mean, what was going on with you that you felt like you could be that optimistic?
So I felt that having a background going to church, first off, and in our past podcast with Kevin, consistency. And I feel that the consistency of being in church from 5th grade up until junior high. And then
I want to say something too, not only going to church, but just your personal relationship with Jesus. I mean, that every day in, day out, not just Sundays. You know, you listen to a sermon every day. You dig into your Bible and read your Bible. You've got your routine in the morning. And I mean, I think with that relationship that you have with God, really.
I knew that nothing was going to happen to me. I knew that it was just going to be a part of my story. And so I knew that I was confident in myself, knowing you're going to be fine. The Lord isn't going to let you die. You know, you are going to go through these, but maybe it's not something that I need to learn. Maybe it's something that somebody else needs to learn.
Okay.
And that's what I always say, just in general, just with anything happening, when something bad happens to somebody else. And, you know, people are always like, well, how could God let that happen? And my first response is, you know, maybe it's not for that person to know. Maybe God took something away from them, like a death. Like, oh, well, why does God allow, you know, children to die? And it is very, very sad, and it's upsetting, but we have to know, as Christ followers, it is sad, but for one, they're in a better place. And two, maybe it's not something that child needed to know. Maybe it's something that somebody else needed to know.
Just having the trust.
Yeah, and just trusting and just knowing that, you know, I wasn't going to, he wasn't going to leave me.
Yeah.
He was always by my side.
Right.
And I knew that I had to be strong for my family, too. So.
And you were.
Yes. Mainly I was waking up about, every hour and a half or so. And my mom thought that I was in pain because my hands are reaching to my head, but really they would only go so far because I had the IVs, but really I was just trying to see if I still had my hair. Because before we did the surgery, one of the nurses came in and said, well, he wasn't a nurse. He was like
part of the team.
A part of the team.
He was a fellow.
Yes. And he said, well, we could shave your head this way. And
like in a C shape over there.
And I was like, God, be strong, Erika Laine. And so then he said, or we could do it in a bonnet to where it's from ear to ear. And I was just said, if you could do that, do that. And so then I didn't know what I was going to, how. And so then I said, oh my gosh, if you do the C shape, just shave off my hair, please.
We're going to take a brief moment away from this podcast and tell you about our sponsor for today. It's Blue Diamond Roofing Construction. It's actually my husband, Erik Williamson. He is a man of God who loves to serve people. And honey, tell us what sets you apart of other roofers or other construction. Tell us about that.
Well, we are not the roofers that are going to come and knock on your door and harass you wanting to sell you something that you don't need. We are going to look out for your best interest, what's going to work best for your house, your income, whatever. We have different levels of materials, shingles. We do windows, gutters, painting, siding, flooring. Basically anything that you need at your home, we can handle for you.
Okay. How are we going to reach you?
Well, you can call our office at 469-360-1578. You can email us at erikbdrc@gmail.com.
That's Erik with a K.
Yes, Erik with a K. Yep. Yep. To come out and take a look or give an estimate, there is no charge for that.
Okay.
If you have emergency repairs where you have a storm, a tree falls, you've got a hole in your roof, whatever, you can call us. We have 24 hour, 7 day a week emergency repairs.
Awesome. All right. Might take us away from our chicken dinner, but hey, he's there to serve. Thanks, everybody. We'll put the contact information in the show notes. And thanks, honey, and back to our show today.
So you did have hair, and thank God that you've got a lot of hair, so we can't even see today. It's been, 5 years later, and we can't even see the scars. Mm-hmm. So that's a great thing. But
she had something called aphasia, which aphasia is just simply, so the part that they worked on her brain was not the physical side. It was the
speech side.
Right. And so, when something that was a little bit touch and go was if you guys can imagine, I always say a 3-year-old little girl, but I'm just saying that because she's a girl, but a 3-year-old child that's just awakened from a nap.
Yeah.
And they come out and they're just all sleepy and real snuggly. And you're like, "Oh, you want something to eat?" And they just nod their head and their little hands are between their lap like, "Uh-huh." And that's really how Erika Laine was. She was like a little girl. And at that time, we had no clue if that's how your personality was going to be forever.
Yeah.
We didn't know if you were going to progress and get better, or if you were just going to go from here she is, a 21-year-old, back to a little girl. But then you had your speech pathology.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, Lisa, I love her. Lisa, if you're listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and like aphasia, with me it only lasted, not far along, but it would be like, my brothers would come over and I'd say, "Oh, it's nice to meet you." and Erik, my stepdad, would say, "Well, it's nice to see you." And I said, "Oh, that's what I meant."
Yeah. And I know those first few nights, though, I know we're backing up a little bit, but those first few nights were really rough, because seeing your child in pain or anyone you love in pain and I slept right by her side. And so as second she would wake up, we would go there. You know what? I just remember we forgot to tell that story.
What story?
Well, okay, so she was only in, like we said, ICU a couple of days. And then like the third day when she moved to a regular room, I can't believe we forgot to talk about this.
No, so she comes over and she's like, "Are you okay? And
are you in pain?"
"Yeah, are you in pain? Like, what's going on? Do you want me to get a nurse?" And I said, "I know you're Erika Seamayer."
Oh, I know what it was. You said right then, I don't know.
I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And then she had to maintain her composure.
So
and as she was turning off the lights, she just had to take a big breath.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, what do you mean? You don't..."
No, I said, "You don't know that." I said, "Honey, you don't know that I'm mom."
Yeah.
And you said, "Well, I know you're Erika Seamayer."
Yeah.
And as sad and scary as that is, you can't even imagine the terror that I thought and felt to think that, oh my goodness, she didn't know who I was, and I'm trying to keep my composure. But the next thing that was so funny to me, and I thought, I tried to find humor, and I thought, well, bless her little heart. I've been with her for 3 days, and she's probably thinking, I know this person seems loving, but who are you? Oh my gosh, when I said, "You don't know I'm mom," and she said, "I know you're Erika Seamayer." That's how aphasia does. It's like they know certain things, but they can't connect them.
Right. So then she showed me a video of me just singing and acting funny.
Yes.
And I was just looking at that video like, man, this lady is so cool.
This is lady's
I am
talented.
like looking at this lady like my head was in my hand, and I was like, I had like a confused face, and I was like, man, if I could only do what this lady does. Like, because when you have aphasia, it's hard to do multiple things at once.
Yeah.
So it's like if I were to tap my foot and reach for a cup, I would have to pick which one I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching, myself.
You were
and
dancing.
I'm dancing and I'm singing and I'm, walking everywhere in the room and I'm pointing.
This was about 2 weeks before this main surgery.
Yeah.
That I'd recorded her.
And so I'm just like looking at myself like, man, this girl is awesome.
And I said,
She's
do you
so
know
cool.
who that is?
I said, no, who is this? And she said, that's you. And I said, that's me?
Isn't
No
that something?
way.
So you guys can imagine her saying, I don't know who you are, going through the emotions of that, the terror of that. Thank goodness
your recovery just went so quick.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when you came home, I remember we recorded that little video.
Yeah.
And I said, you said, thanks everyone who has been praying for me. And it was really like she was a little girl, but, you know, that was the most precious little video. But there was soon after that. So like I said, I was by your side, you know, day in, day out, watching over you, making sure you're okay. And
then we had to schedule like 15-minute times because we had to tell people, I know you want to see your granddaughter, or I know you want to see her, but she just can't be around too many people right now. And so we literally had to wait, like a week and a half or two?
I was very protective of you because when you looked at Erika Laine, she looked normal. I mean, but she couldn't comprehend
what was
very much at a time. And so I remember one of your friends was over.
Oh, Vanessa.
She was visiting, and she wasn't, you know, overstimulating her or anything. She was actually doing flashcards.
So, man, I love that moment. So she came over, and this was, I had already been awake, or this had been like several weeks later. And, oh my gosh, sorry to interrupt this. So for the texting, you knew that something was wrong because I had no idea that I had a phone for like a week and a half after.
I was like, okay, I know her brain's not awake yet because she didn't ask for her phone.
And so then when I did have my phone, you're just thinking, oh, well, you know, I'll just give her phone, and it would just be like GGFFF and GGGGAAA. And my favorite emoji is still to this day the girl where she's waving.
Yeah.
And so I would throw a few of those in there, and finally they just had to give me a call.
They're like, I don't really know what you're saying, but it was the cutest thing because when Vanessa was over, and I was just in the kitchen. It was a big open concept loft, and they were sitting on the couch, and it had been about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I saw Erika Laine say, I don't really know what else to say. And I knew at that point I had to say, okay. And it was hard because people did want to visit you, but I really had to be protective of that, of your time. But something I was going to say is you were in the shower, and I'm standing right outside the shower. This is the turning point that I knew everything was going to be okay. Because before this time that I'm about to tell you about, we didn't know. I mean, we thought she could be like a little girl for the rest of her life. And so we quote lots of movies, and we laugh a lot because it was just the two of us for so many years. We just have that bond. And she comes, I'd handed her towel, and she put the towel like around her forehead and just kind of, you know, tight around her face. And she opens up the shower curtain, and she goes, do you have any food for me? And I still don't even know where that's from, but that was something we always used to say, and just die laughing. And I thought, she's back. She's going to be okay. And actually part of your therapy was singing. And you guys, this is a wild thing. So she couldn't put sentences together at times, but she would sing and know every word. That's
cool. I forgot about that. Yeah.
You still knew every word. It was so amazing.
Yeah.
I mean.
And Lisa was the one that gave us that advice.
Yeah. Yep, she sure did. So because of that experience, now you want to go and work with children?
Lisa helped me tremendously, not only for my healing, but also a direction of where I wanted my life to go and what I wanted to do for a career.
Yeah.
So my goal is to work with anybody who's born or, well, just depends.
Like an infant
to like 25, 26.
Okay.
And just kind of be with them and help them almost do what she did with me.
Okay, so you turned lemons into lemonade.
I did.
Basically.
Yes, I did.
You turned that into, instead of poor me or why me, you turn it into how can I serve others and bless others and share your experience with them.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and we're so grateful and congratulations on graduating this month.
Thank you.
That is a big accomplishment. I think it was not only something that you had in your heart even, but that you wanted to get a degree before this happened with your brain surgery. But afterwards, I think it was you were just laser focused on having that, being able to have that kind of accomplishment after going through everything that you had.
Yes.
So hats off to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, and I hope that we just are able to, just shed some light on going through tragedy and being able to overcome and always look to God and surrender to Him everything that you have, and He's going to show up in your life, right?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
He's with me all the time.
All right.
Before we close the show, I just wanted to give a special shout out to my first Patreon supporters. Their names are Alvin Sims, Erika Laine, Bonnie Steele, Michelle Clark, Shelley Good, Tracy Doyle, Jackie Burleson, Becky Hudacek, Tammy Christensen, Chelsea Frazier, Rosalie Torok, Betty Behrens, and Big Galen Wilson. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support us, there's a link in the show notes. Well, thanks everyone again, and if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to the podcast and write a good review and share on your social media, and we'll see you again here on Amazing Grace Talk.